Nintendo have had massive success with Animal Crossing New Horizons. That should be a good thing if you're a big Nintendo fan, right? Well, I'll tell you what, if you enjoy your Zeldas, your Pokemon, your Mario Odysseys, then you should be worried because this could lead Nintendo down a very dark path indeed. Hold on to your chairs as we go into why. Hi, Estelden here. So Animal Crossing New Horizons, absolute juggernaut. I did not expect it to sell this well, to have sold more than Breath of the Wild. I don't think anyone in their right mind would have thought that. Certainly not Nintendo themselves either. And I gotta say, with everything that's going on in the world and kind of started when this game came out in March, I think, and I don't want to get into too many conspiracy theories here, but hey, if anyone had any knowledge of what's going on in the world, it had to be Nintendo. Because when they delayed this game, the timing could not have been better for its release. I mean, everyone was at home, they could waste their time playing around, getting into this life sim kind of game, and just losing themselves in it, and that's got to be a big part of why it's done so greatly with so many different people. I want to start off by saying that I've got no problem with Animal Crossing as a series. I've got nothing against this game. The only reason that I've made this video is that I am worried that the success of this game is going to be detrimental to the rest of Nintendo's offerings. I think there's a lot of people who are playing this game who don't play a lot of other Nintendo titles. They're not that interested in maybe Mario Odyssey or a more sort of hardcore style Mario, we could say, in comparison to the 2D titles. They might not be interested in Pokemon Sword, whereas they may enjoy Pokemon Let's Go, that sort of game. Now, I will say that I'm sure there's plenty of people who like those types of games and love Animal Crossing. That's completely fine as well. I'm sure those people love both. They don't want Animal Crossing to go away, but they also don't want games like Breath of the Wild to go away either. And you'll probably say that's absolutely crazy. Breath of the Wild sold gangbusters too. Absolutely. But I think there's got to be a cost-benefit analysis in there too. And I can tell you right now that the time it took to create Breath of the Wild, the resources Nintendo put into a game like that compared to Animal Crossing, I would imagine it's quite a bit different. The team behind Animal Crossing have made a whole bunch of different games in very different sectors of the casual market, I would say. They were involved in the mobile games, a lot of the other casual games like Ring Fit Adventure, 1-2 Switch. They're all over that side of Nintendo, which Nintendo absolutely loves. I frankly think that with the massive success of New Horizons, in combination with the direction we've seen in the past with the Wii, we've seen it with some elements of the Wii U, and again on the Switch now with the motion controls, that Nintendo could then continue to go down a road where they try and bring in more of that non-gamer audience, and they leave the hardcore Nintendo fans out in the fog, basically. Because they've done it before. They've shown in the past they don't give a shit about hardcore Nintendo fans. They're always going to chase the next grandma. If we look now back to where all of this kind of began, it began with the GameCube. The GameCube was a very core gamer console. They had all the third parties releasing all the same games that we saw on the Xbox, the PS2, and then we also had the Nintendo titles as well. So we got the Sunshines, the Wind Wakers, all those great games. For many people, it was their favourite Nintendo console. When you back up all of those titles with things like Metroid Prime, it seemed like a real winner. The problem was it didn't really sell that well. Nintendo had problems because at that time, there was a new player in the market in Microsoft with the Xbox. The PS2 was doing a really phenomenal job with lots of gamers releasing all sorts of different really, really good exclusives. And Nintendo, while they were kind of playing catch up to some degree with the Nintendo 64, I think that's when they kind of went, nah, we've got to change something here. The problem was, rather than really doubling down on the core audience and trying to get those Sony fans in, they decided to target people who just weren't interested in games in the first place. So with the Wii, that's when we got Wii Sports, that's when they got Grandma off the couch. Problem is, Grandma wanted to play for a while, and then she decided she wanted to sit down again. And that happened in so many different households, and that led to everyone returning their Wiis. Nah, I had a fuck enough of throwing the Frisbee virtually. I mean, I can go outside to do that. And we can't anymore, so it'd be perfect timing for something like that, but you know what I mean. So what then happened is Nintendo finally realized, especially after the failings of the Wii U, that they had to be a bit more subtle in their approach. They had to find a way to bridge the gap between those people who don't really play games and then the ones who might dabble a bit. They might play mobile phone games, things like that. So they've tried to reel in those people a little more slowly than being really obvious with something like Wii Sports, because people won't stick to those. They'll play it a few times and then move on to something else. Enter the Nintendo Switch, which presents itself as a hardcore gaming console. It's got all the core Nintendo stuff. They launched first year, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey. It looked like an absolute surefire hit. But now things look to have dried up a little bit. We got Paper Mario a few months ago, we've got an Animal Crossing this year, and now things look a bit more bleak. What I said earlier about them absolutely screwing over hardcore Nintendo fans is just ringing even more true than ever. It really feels like we're getting more re-releases of Wii U games than ever before, and I think it's because the original software lineup, it just hasn't really been there in the same way. And you can say that with everything going on in the world, that's why these games aren't here. They've just been delayed. I don't think so, because Japan's culture, they don't stop for anything, let's be honest. And they've been managing to bring out, we've had the announcement of Pikmin 3, some big bonus edition. I'm sure that's going to be great for someone who already owned it on the Wii U. I don't think so. And the hardcore crowd, they're going to be looking around and going, I mean, the only thing we really got this year was New Horizons. Sure, we got Paper Mario, but they're continuing to target the casual audience. They don't give a shit about the people who loved it on GameCube and had that awesome battle system, all those great JRPG elements. They don't really give a fuck about that. So those gamers, this sort of news, I don't think it's going to help them, because you have a look, Animal Crossing, the popular animated community-based game that lets users build lives on islands, it sold... Let's have a look here. Total sales are 22.4 million, second only to Call of Duty, which really tells you the absolute juggernaut of a sphere they're basically in, because that is absolutely massive. Now, a lot of those same people who I'm talking about, as I mentioned, they probably loved Animal Crossing, but Nintendo are going to see that. They're going to look at what else they're doing in the gaming industry, and that includes all of these mobile titles. We've got the Pokemon game with Tencent, that really obvious League of Legends ripoff. They've had other mobile titles. We had the Mario Kart one that's full of microtransactions. And very interestingly as well, the studio here, so this is Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development, who seem to be behind a lot of the real casual games, a lot of the mobile games, also Animal Crossing New Horizons. So they've developed that, Animal Crossing, and then they've also done New Leaf Welcome Amiibo, so some sort of spin-off from what I can tell. And they've also done the mobile game, Pocket Camp. So you can see that this is a studio that's probably getting a lot of praise from Nintendo. And they're going to be wanting to push this forward, because when a game sells 22 million, when it probably didn't cost that much to develop compared to Mario Odyssey or one of those really big Nintendo games, that's where the money is. And remember that Nintendo also have their shareholders to worry about. They're not like Valve, the owners of Steam. They can't just do anything they want. They do have to look at the short term sometimes, unfortunately. And I don't think that's going to lead us down a road where there's not going to be any Marios, there's not going to be any Zeldas. That would be absolutely ridiculous. But we might get less of those core games, and that's what I'm worried about. When the Nintendo Switch was pitched to us, we were promised that we were going to get all of the handheld teams working on games for this one console. All the home console guys, they're working on this one as well. So we should be getting double the games. It really doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like we've really gotten many more games than the Wii U, and that was seen as a disappointment in the software front. There apparently wasn't enough exclusives. But now we're just getting Wii U ports. And those ports seem to be a way to kind of tie over that hardcore audience while they get away with releasing these rubbish spin-offs. When Let's Go came out, a lot of people were pissed, but, and I'll say this as someone who actually enjoyed playing the Let's Go games, I thought they were a nice little nostalgia hit. I now look back and feel like that might have been the start of things going in the wrong direction, because it came out, we were distracted by a lot of other really good titles, so there was still like Breath of the Wild to catch up on, there was still Odyssey, there were still a lot of great games along with Let's Go in that first year or so. But now, when things are looking bleak, that's when it gets a little bit worrying. And you even look at the new features in something like Tropical Freeze, and an absolute slap in the face to people who already own it on Wii U. Instead of getting some new single-player content, maybe something awesome to really please those existing fans who felt like, yeah, look, I'm going to buy it again, play it on a handheld, but, you know, it'd be nice to get a bonus. You get a fucking, like, easy mode on it. You get something that allows you to just snooze through the fucking levels, which is pretty much ridiculous. It makes me think that Nintendo don't really like their audience that much. The problem with the hardcore gamer crowd is they always want more. And I don't say that in that, oh, gamers are being entitled, you've got to stop. I don't believe in that at all. It's ridiculous. I mean, if you're a big fan of a product, you've been following it for years and years, obviously you're going to be a bit more critical. You've seen where they've got it wrong, you've seen where they got it right, so you're going to hold them to a fairly high standard when you're parting with your money. But Nintendo want the more uninformed crowd. They want the people who can play Pokemon Go on their mobile phone and find it to be the funnest thing ever, because when you break it down really simply, you get those people who are not that into games who might just think, oh cool, I can go around, I can catch Pokemon. They're not going to look at the design aspects. They're not going to sort of have the smoke and mirrors removed for them, like a lot of people such as myself might have when it comes to these games, because we've seen so many before. The people who enjoy Pokemon Go are then going to get into the New Horizons. They're going to get into all of the casual games that Nintendo are bringing to the console. And Nintendo want to focus on those guys because they're the ones who are going to be spending a lot more of the money more regularly. They're going to be happy to buy DLC and microtransactions because we've seen it with mobile phone games. Nintendo are targeting those sort of people who are happy to get out the credit card for absolutely anything, whether it's a skin, whether it's just another way to customize your character, those sorts of things that aren't real content. Nintendo don't seem to care about the content department as much as they used to. Because we look at games that they've released as well, or they've at least overseen, they've allowed the game to be released. And that comes from games like Mario Tennis Aces, good game, lacking in content. Then you get Super Mario Party, good game, again, it's lacking in content. People felt, right, when's the updates coming? They're not, but Nintendo can give you the impression it's coming, because with all this live service stuff, they can say, yeah, there could be freeware updates, there'll be other things coming. And you think, right, well, I'm going to go out and spend my money on it because I know Nintendo are going to be bringing me something new. I can trust them, right? But they don't really need to. They can release maybe like a new character or two and then they can move on. Or they can do what they're doing with New Horizons. And I've got to say, as much as the positive reception to that game seemed to be quite large, a lot of people loved it, I did also see a lot of really big fans of the game say that it was slightly lacking in content. And I saw a ridiculous, very, very popular post by someone who criticized the people who said that there wasn't enough content in New Horizons. This person said that, well, if you've put 1,000 hours into it, how can you complain that there's not any content? And a lot of people agreed. That was heavily liked. Everyone was saying, yep, this is it, absolutely. And I found that, frankly, to be completely stupid. MMOs have been on the market since the 90s. Probably even before. I don't know how many of those fucking old DOS games there probably are, so that was probably a bad statement. But I'll tell you what, those games you can get 10,000 hours out of, and you can just keep playing endlessly and endlessly. Does that mean that there's that much worth of content in the game? Absolutely not. Most of the time you're doing the same shit over and over again, and that doesn't mean it's content. If I play RuneScape and I cut trees for 10 hours to get my woodcutting up to level 50, is that like a 10,000 hours worth of content? I don't think so. All I've been doing is the same thing. That's the piece of content. It's a very small piece of content. I might choose to partake in it because I enjoy it, but not everyone's going to. So that's not an argument. The content and the different maps, all of the different activities you can do, that's the content. And if it's lacking, it doesn't matter how many hours that one individual might get out of it. It's about the core, it's about the whole. And I don't want to see Nintendo get away with half-assed releases because some people will just happily eat shit for Nintendo because of the logo, because of the brand and the following they've built up. People are obviously starting to get sick of it. A lot of those Wii U defenders, all of those people, Nintendo happily slapped them in the face because yet another grandma was happy to pick up 1-2 Switch and had a bit of fun with it, but they're not going to build like a long-term audience. I'm really worried because the Nintendo Switch, it is my favorite Nintendo console or device by far. It is absolutely incredible. Incredible piece of tech. I've said it before, but I want that to be the absolute standard from all departments. I want it to be a great device that I can use as a second gaming device, so to speak, because I like to use it alongside PC and other things like that. But I want the software lineup to really match it. And when it's just Wii U releases, when Nintendo see New Horizons 22 million sold, they think, right, we can double down on our mobile games. We can double down on another casual game that's lacking content because all these people are going to pick it up. But Nintendo, you need to learn because you've been in this spot before with the Wii. It didn't last because everyone got sick of the Wii, and by the end of it, it was pretty easy to say that it wasn't a success. It was an overnight success, but it didn't carry on. You didn't have any lasting value with the Wii, and that's why no one followed you to the Wii U. And you can't just think, oh, we'll release a Switch 2 and everyone will jump on that. They won't, because the indie developers will continue to develop for the original Switch because it's got the tech to power those smaller games on. There's no reason for those same people to buy a Switch 2 whenever that eventually comes out. They don't need to if they can play all the same games that they were already playing on the original Switch. There's no reason for people to spend $500 on the new, exciting Switch with all of the new tech and the new battery and everything if everyone's already getting a great experience around the original Switch and most of their library is just indie games. It is just smaller third-party games. People aren't going to spend that much money just to pay Doom 3 or something when it comes out and they eventually port that. It's not going to be the juggernaut it was. And I can't see Nintendo going in another direction. The Switch has been so successful on its own. I'm sure they're going to repeat it and do something similar when the next one comes around. It would be a waste not to do so. So the Nintendo need to get the software on track. They can't just keep relying on re-releases. I don't want them to see New Horizon and go, yep, that's what we can do. We'll just release one game like that. We'll have a bunch of updates for it. We don't need to release a game every month, which they were doing originally. When the Switch first came out first year, that's what they kind of sold to us. They gave the impression they were going to release a brand new game of some sort every single month. And it sounds ridiculous, but that's how you build a long-term following. People have trust in Sony, because even if we might hate The Last of Us Part 2, or a lot of us do, you still know you're going to get quite a few games. You might get that turd, but then you might get an absolute brilliant game in Ghost of Tsushima not too long after. The games just keep coming. With Nintendo, they're not at the moment. They just seem like they put them all in the first year to get everyone to buy the Switch, and now they're just hanging back. Casual games, the hardcore fans, fuck them. And now we're in this stage. What I'd like to see Nintendo do is really to start to balance it out. We haven't had a new core Zelda experience during this generation. I know everyone loves Breath of the Wild, but I think a lot of those same people eventually are going to have that real hankering for the old style Zelda experience. And Link's Awakening, releasing that again, I played it 20 fucking years ago. That doesn't count. Just because some people might enjoy the graphic remake, a lot of people still had access to that game. I believe it was on a number of virtual consoles. And again, the hardcore fans are the ones that get screwed in that. You need to give them something new. I'd love to see Breath of the Wild 2 maybe take advantage of the world that's already been built, but really build in that core Zelda experience. I want to see like 8, 9 different high quality dungeons, shrines with different lengths, not just the same one puzzle and then you're out. Mix it up. Don't make this Zelda about the overworld. Make this one about the dungeons, and then maybe have a bit of cool world stuff around it so it's still true somewhat to the Breath of the Wild original experience, but something that kind of pleases a few more people, because Majora's Mask did that in a way. It was very different to Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time did give you the core Zelda experience. Majora's Mask gave you something different. So don't be lazy and just release like the same game again. Expect all the same people to love it. Because Nintendo, you've really learned exactly how to win people over, win their hearts in that first year or two, and then they get sick of it. And then you're stuck in that rut again. Don't do another Wii U. Don't just rest on your laurels and try and keep going with it, because people will just get over it. Nintendo have been a little bit lazy with the software offerings as well, because we've mostly gotten like expansions, it feels like, to a lot of the Wii U games. So instead of getting Woolly World, we get Crafted World. It might look a bit different, it might have a different art style, but it just feels like a side game. It doesn't feel like a brand new innovation. It certainly doesn't feel like what they tried to do with Breath of the Wild, where it was like a new big thing. And even if I personally wasn't a big fan, at least they were trying to do something that was a bit more exciting to some degree. I would have liked to see that go in a different direction. That was still kind of core Zelda to me, but at least it was a bit different. It wasn't just extremely safe. But that's what they've been doing with Paper Mario. They've been doing it with Kirby, games like that. And again, it just seems to come back to that real casual audience, and they're not really interested on expanding on the guys who've been following for a long time. Nintendo, for fuck's sake, a lot of us are adults. We play a lot of other games, and we use Nintendo as sort of a side device, and we like to play those games on the side. So I'd like to see them cater to that crowd a bit more, instead of saying, fuck you, because you hold us to standards, and you really dissect everything, you really have a good look, you want a lot of content. Instead, they're just trying to bring in more of the mums, more of those people. And I think it's going to catch up with them, so absolutely, you should absolutely be proud of yourselves with New Horizon. Big success, great game for many, many people. But please don't let that be the direction that you only focus on because it's bringing in the core amount of revenue. Because you need the guys who are going to stick with you through this. There's going to be more bad times. There's going to be another Wii U at some point. And you need the hardcore fans, or else that's where you might really fall off and be really stuck. So I want you to fulfill your promise. You said that the Nintendo Switch would have the software offering of the home console, the handheld device as well. You said that we kind of get both, so fulfill that. Keep the Nintendo Switch going for another 5 years if you need to. I don't see it getting old anytime soon. Keep it going, keep the software stuff coming out, and then by the end of it, hopefully we can see the Switch as being not just the best piece of tech, but also the best software offering that Nintendo's ever put out. So I wish them luck. I really, really love Nintendo. I love everything that they've been doing, but I'm just a little bit concerned, especially with the mobile stuff. So let's see where we go from here. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks very much, and bye-bye.